Mute कर ली. Assalamu alaikum students. So we are doing kidney, as all of you know, we are doing glomerulonephritis. Yesterday I covered membranous nephropathy, rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis, then membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis, and then I did IgA nephropathy. So today we are going to do, yeah, again you move over slide. Sorry, it's not moving forward. I'll just wait for 1 second. Okay, so today we are going to do minimal chain disease, and then I'm going to do focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. That will cover all the glomerulonephritis, and then I'm going to start with tubulointerstitial diseases. Okay, in the minimal chain disease, it is mostly seen in the children between 2 to 6 years of age. There is going to be diffuse effacement of food processes of visceral epithelial cells, which are also called podocytes. And this can only be detected by electron microscopy. By light microscopy, the glomeruli appears normal. So in minimal chain disease, there is going to be effacement of food processes. There are no morphological changes seen on the light microscopic appearance. This only can be seen on the electron microscopy, and this is mostly seen in children between 2 to 6 years of age. Sometimes it follows a routine immunization as well. After that, the child develops minimal chain disease. Next is the etiology and pathogenesis of the minimal chain disease. There are no immune complexes in the glomeruli, but several factors point to the immunological basis. Though we do not see any immune complexes by immunofluorescence microscopy or by electron microscopy, but still there are many chances that this is an of immunological origin. Number one, it can be because of its clinical association with respiratory tract infections, and after the immunization places it in the immunological category. Number two, that is there is going to be a quick response to steroid therapy or immunosuppressive therapy, or it can be associated with atopic disorders like eczema, and its increased prevalence is seen in certain hemoleucocytic antigen haplotype as well. Sometimes increased incidence is seen with Hodgkin's lymphoma. In that case, minimal chain disease is mostly seen in the adults. So though there is no immunological deposits which are found in immunofluorescence microscopy or electron microscopy, still we can call it as an immunological basis because it is associated with respiratory tract infections and after immunization, or when we give an immunosuppression or steroid therapy, the person becomes normal quickly. And it is also associated with other atopic disorders like eczema, and certain HLA type have more prevalence of this minimal chain disease than others, and sometimes it is associated with Hodgkin's lymphoma in older people. In pathogenesis, in the current hypothesis is that some immune mechanism is involved that results in elaboration of factors that damage the visceral epithelial cells, and they cause damage to the podocytes, and this causes proteinuria. Ultrastructure studies have primary visceral epithelial cell injury, which is called podocytopathy, and loss of glomerular polyanions implicated in the animal models. Defects in the charge barrier can lead to proteinuria. Actual route of proteinuria is not involved. So first, I have said that there is going to be diffuse effacement of food processes in the minimal chain disease. That's why we do not see any changes in the light microscopy. Ultrastructurally, only you can see loss of food processes on electron microscopy. In immunofluorescence, there are no deposits. But we can say that currently this hypothesis is going that it is because of the elaboration of certain factors that damage the visceral epithelial cell and which lead to proteinuria. There is going to be podocytopathy or visceral epithelial cell injury. Loss of glomerular polyanions can be present. Patient develops a proteinuria, but we really do not know how this proteinuria is occurring. But there is also has some defects in the charge barrier which can lead to proteinuria. So this is the minimal chain disease by light microscopy. In this case, you can see the glomeruli is looking essentially normal, and these are the tubules. Immunofluorescent microscopy, no deposits of complement can be seen. In this case, electron microscopy show loss of food processes, no food processes are present. And there is going to be diffuse loss of food processes in the bigger picture, you can see formation of microvilli can be present or vacuoles can develop within the visceral epithelial cells. This is again photomicrograph of electron microscopy. These arrows are pointing that there is loss of food processes. This is another arrow, okay? So in the minimal chain disease, you can only going to see loss of food processes under the electron microscope, while under the light microscope, the glomeruli appear normal. The clinical picture is the patient presents with nephrotic syndrome with Mess's protein urea, mostly albumin is filtered out. Despite the renal function test, despite all the proteinuria, the renal function tests remain normal. Response to corticosteroid therapy is excellent. Long-term prognosis is excellent. Minimal chain disease can be seen in adults when it is associated with Hodgkin's lymphoma or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which also causes interstitial nephritis. Okay, I'm going to do interstitial nephritis in the next lecture tomorrow, inshallah. Okay, so this is the minimal chain disease. Next is the focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, FSGS. Focal segmental glomerulosclerosis is the most common cause of nephrotic syndrome in adults in the United States. Sclerosis of some glomeruli is seen, and in affected glomerulus, only a portion of capillary is involved, that is segmental. So in all over the kidney, you can see that few glomeruli show glomerular sclerosis. And within that glomerulus, some segments of capillaries are involved while other segments appear to be normal. It manifests as a acute or subacute onset of nephrotic syndrome or non-nephrotic proteinuria. There is going to be hypertension, hematuria, and osteotemia are also present. So in focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, there is going to be sclerosis of some of the glomeruli, and in these glomeruli, some of the capillary segments are normal while others are involved, and it manifests as acute or subacute nephrotic syndrome with non-nephrotic proteinuria, hypertension, hematuria, azotemia are also present. Pathogenesis. There is going to be degeneration and disruption of visceral epithelial cells with effacement of food processes. In this focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, again, there is going to be loss of food processes, but there are other changes which can be seen as well in the light microscopy. Okay, so degeneration and disruption of visceral epithelial cells with effacement of food processes are seen, which resemble the diffuse epithelial cell change as seen in minimal chain disease, and podocytopathies can be seen. It is the epithelial damage which is the hallmark for the focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. So epithelial damage is the hallmark to label focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. Multiple mechanisms can cause such epithelial damage. Circulating and genetically determined effects affecting components of slit diaphragm complex can be seen. Hyalinosis and sclerosis is the result of entrapment of plasma protein in the extremely permeable foci and laying down of extracellular matrix deposition as well. So hyalinosis and sclerosis. Hyalinosis is the pinkish material which is present within the glomeruli, and sclerosis is when it becomes sclerosed. So it is because of the permeation of plasma protein which are going to settle down in the glomeruli, and they're also laying down of extracellular matrix deposition. Okay, so this is the basis for hyalinosis and sclerosis. In the pathogenesis, some genetic bases have been discovered in focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. There are two genes involved, NPHS1 gene and NPHS2 gene. NPHS1 gene encodes protein nephrin. Nephrin is a key component of slit diaphragm that controls glomerular permeability. Several mutations of NPHS1 gene can give rise to congenital nephrotic syndrome of Finnish type or a glomerulopathy with the loss of food processes. So NPHS1 gene encodes nephrin. Nephrin is a protein which is present in the glomerular diaphragm, slit diaphragm, and it controls glomerular permeability. Its loss can give rise to congenital nephrotic syndrome of Finnish type. Finnish type is a variety of nephrotic syndrome. NPHS2 gene. It encodes protein product podosin. Podosin is also localized in the slit diaphragm. Mutation in NPHS2 gene can result in syndrome of steroid-resistant nephrotic syndrome in childhood. As I told you that steroids are very, Nephrotic syndrome is very responsive to steroid therapy in children, but because of the loss of NPHS2 gene, which encodes podicin, this nephrotic syndrome will become resistant to the steroid therapy. Okay, so these are NPHS1 gene and NPHS2 gene, which are involved in the pathogenesis of FSGS or focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. Third type of mutation can be seen in alpha-actinin 4 in the case of autosomal dominant FSGS leading to end-stage renal disease. This is the defects in alpha-actinin 4. Then fourth mutation can be present in the TRPC6 gene, which is expressed widely in podocytes, where the genetic mutations lead to disturbances in podocyte function by increasing calcium influx in these cells. So mutation of NPHS1 gene, NPHS2 gene, alpha-actinin and TRPC gene can be involved in the pathogenesis of focal segmental glomerulosclerosis leading to increase in the output of proteins. Normally, there are no proteins present in the urine. They are all reabsorbed through the ultrafiltration of plasma. But whenever there is glomerular damage, then you can only see proteinuria. Integrity of all above factors is essential to maintain the normal glomerular filtration barrier. Another kind of gene, which is apolipoprotein L1 gene, APOL1 sequence variants can lead to focal segmental glomerulosclerosis and end-stage renal disease in African descent people. Okay, so this is the underlying pathogenesis for FSGS. Light microscopic findings. The light microscopic findings, which can be seen in focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, may involve only a minority of the glomeruli, or this can be missed on the biopsy material because we only call a sufficient biopsy if we have 3 to 5 number of glomeruli present in that biopsy. But if this biopsy only contains the normal glomeruli, then this can be missed on the biopsy. The lesion initially tends to involve the juxtamedullary glomeruli and subsequently becomes generalized. In the sclerotic segment, there is collapse of capillary loops, increase in the matrix and segmental deposition of plasma protein along the capillary wall, which is producing hyalinosis. Hyalinosis may become pronounced as to occlude the capillary lumen. Lipid and foam cells can be present as well. Glomeruli that do not show segmental lesion usually appear normal. So I'll show you. This is the light microscopic appearance in focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. You can see a normal glomerulus. Here you can see glomerulosclerosis. Some of the segments show hyalinosis and sclerosis, while the rest of the capillary loops are normal. So one segment is normal and the other is involved. Biopsy from a patient for FSGS, one of the glomeruli shows segmental sclerosis like this. It is shown here. Others appear remarkably normal. This is normal. And here the tubules are present, which are also showing tubular atrophy. This is the light microscopic appearance in focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. Okay, so there is going to be sclerosis and hyalinosis. I've told you the sclerosis and hyalinosis is because of the entrapment of the plasma protein, which got lodged, and the later fibrosis occurs. So some of the glomerular capillaries in the same glomeruli can undergo sclerosis, while others appear normal, okay, as I've shown in the photomicrograph. Next is the electron microscopy. Electron microscopy, both sclerotic and non-sclerotic areas show diffuse effacement of foot processes and focal detachment of epithelial cells and denudation of the underlying glomerular basement membrane. It means that there, on electron microscopy, we can see there is loss of foot processes and the epithelial cells are detached from the glomerular basement membrane, and glomerular basement membrane appears denuded, or means it appears to be that nothing is attached to it. By immunofluorescence microscopy, we can see deposits of IgM and C3, which are present in the sclerotic area as well as in the mesenterium. In addition to sclerosis, there is marked hyalinosis as well. With passage of time, increased number of glomeruli are involved. It later leads to total sclerosis of glomeruli. That is, the whole of the glomerulus becomes sclerosed, which is called global. And tubular injury and interstitial fibrosis are seen as well. So under the electron microscopy, I'll show you. And there is going to be loss of food processes. You can see there is fusion of food processes present. Sometimes there is going to be denudation. Here you can see the overlying epithelial cells are damaged and only the glomerular basement membrane can be seen. This is the denudation of the basement membrane. or glomerular basement membrane. And by immunofluorescent microscopy, you can see IgM and C3 deposits which are present in the mesenteric as well as in the sclerotic areas. Okay, so this is the morphological changes by electron microscopy, immunofluorescent microscopy, and light microscopy, which I have explained earlier. Okay, next, there is a variant of focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, which is called collapsing glomerulopathy. It is a morphological variant of focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, which is called collapsing glomerulopathy. It is characterized by retraction or collapse of entire glomerular tuft with or without additional focal segmental glomerulosclerosis of above type. So only you are going to see retraction or collapse of entire glomerular tuft. There is going to be proliferation and hypertrophy of glomerular visceral epithelial cells. So it can be idiopathic or it can be associated with a drug like pemidronate. The most characteristic lesion of this type is also seen in HIV-associated nephropathy. So this collapsing glomerulopathy is also a characteristic microscopic appearance of HIV-associated nephropathy. Tubular injury can be seen in the formation of microcysts, and in the case of this morphological variant of collapsing glomerulopathy, this has a poor prognosis. So I'm going to explain it here in the photomicrograph. It is clinically and pathologically distinct variant of FSGS, characterized by widening and collapse of glomerular loops. So you can see glomerular loops become widened and they are going to be collapsed. Okay, so here you cannot see any capillary loops present. Poor prognosis is seen with rapid loss of renal function and no response to therapy is also there. It can occur as an idiopathic disease without any known cause or can be associated with HIV, human immunodeficiency virus affected infections as well, or AIDS infection. So glomerulopathy is visible retraction of glomerular tufts. You can see there are no glomerular tufts present here. Proliferation of capillary of visceral epithelial cells is seen. Proliferation of visceral epithelial cells can be seen, and there is going to be protein absorption droplets as well in the visceral epithelial cells. So this is a specific type of glomerulopathy which is associated with AIDS patient as well, seen in the HIV infections, or it can have no underlying cause as well, can be idiopathic. So we have done minimal chain disease and focal segmental glomerulosclerosis with a variant which is collapsing glomerulopathy. I hope this is clear. Okay, I have made a chart for you, and this is also given in Robbins for the comparison of different glomerulonephritis with their clinical presentation, their light microscopic appearance, their immunofluorescent microscopic appearance, and electron microscopic appearance. Okay, so this chart is very important. You have to remember that. You can read it from Robbins as well. So I'm going to go through here. In post-streptococcal glomerulonephritis, it presents with nephritic syndrome. Glomeruli are hypercellular. They show proliferation of the mesangial cells and endothelial cells with WBC infiltration. I have explained to you in the earliest lecture. There are going to be deposits of IgG and C3, which are granular deposits in the glomerular basement membrane and the mesangium. And under the electron microscopy, you can see subepithelial humps. Then rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis also presents with nephritic syndrome, and it is rapidly progressive. Crescent formations are seen in the glomerulus. I told you the epithelial cells of the Bowman's capsule, they proliferate and they occlude the Bowman space, and there is going to be crescent formation with the capillary loops are going to be affected, and there is going to be bloodless glomeruli as because of the compression of capillary loops. In this case, we see linear IgG and C3 deposit in the glomerular basement membrane, and by electron microscopy, there is going to be glomerular basement membrane disruption. I have shown you in the photomicrograms earlier. Next is the membranous glomerulonephritis or membranous nephropathy. This presents with nephrotic syndrome. There is diffuse glomerular basement thickening on light microscopy. I showed you the slide yesterday. There are granular IgG and C3 deposits in the glomerular basement membrane. Subepithelial deposits are seen by electron microscopy. Then membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis was of type 1 and type 2. Type 2 is now known as dense deposit disease. Membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis presents with nephrotic syndrome. There is glomerular proliferation, glomerular basement membrane split, double contour appearance, or tram track appearance of glomerular basement membrane is seen, which I explained you yesterday. The immunofluorescent microscopy show IgG, C3, C1, and C4 deposits, and these are subendothelial deposits. In the first lecture, I told you what are subepithelial, what are subendothelial deposits, what are the deposits present within the glomerular basement membrane. I've also given you a picture. I'm going to upload the lectures as well, so you can have a good look at the slides again and again. Next is the dense deposit disease. Previous name for dense deposit disease was the type 2 membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis. It presents with hematuria and chronic renal failure. Glomerular proliferation, glomerular basement membrane split, double contour, tram track appearance is similar morphology in both by light microscopy, okay, and type membranoproliferative and dense deposit disease. But in immunofluorescence, only C3 deposits are seen. And there are dense deposits in the electron microscopy, but we really do not know how they are made. Next is the IgA nephropathy. It presents in hematuria, proteinuria. Mesangial proliferation is seen in the light microscopy picture. IgA deposits are seen in immunofluorescence, and mesangial deposits are seen in electron microscopy. Next is the minimal chain disease and FSGS, which I've just done it with you today. So this chart is very important for your point of view to remember what type of picture is seen in which type of glomerulonephritis and what are causing nephritic syndrome and what are causing nephrotic syndrome. This whole chart is given in your Robbins as well. And they also include a column of pathogenesis, which I could not incorporate because of the less space. Now I'm telling you the differences between nephrotic and nephritic syndrome. It is a very important question from your Viva point of view, from your MCQs, SCQs, and OSPE. We do not give it on OSPE, but it is important in Viva, SCQs, MCQs. So in nephrotic syndrome, onset is insidious, while in nephritic syndrome, it is an abrupt onset. I've told you what are the glomerulonephritis causing nephrotic and which are causing nephritic. Edema is seen in 4+ in nephrotic syndrome, while it is milder in nephritic syndrome. Blood pressure is normal in nephrotic syndrome. It is raised in nephritic syndrome. Proteinuria is marked in nephrotic syndrome. More than 3.5 grams of protein per day are lost in the urine, while in nephritic it is only 2+. Hematuria may or may not occur in nephrotic syndrome. It is 3+ in nephritic. Red blood cells cast are absent in nephrotic syndrome, while they are present in nephritic syndrome. Serum albumin is low. It is normal in nephritic syndrome or slightly reduced. Yesterday, I also told you the pathogenesis of nephrotic syndrome with pathophysiology of nephrotic syndrome I described in the detail. Next is the diabetic nephropathy. Diabetes mellitus, you know, you are going to study in your endocrinology lectures, but diabetic nephropathy is very important in the point of view because all the diabetes patients which are type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus, if they are not having a good sugar the glycemic control, they can lead to diabetic nephropathy. So hemoglobin A1C is very important for the patient's well-being. If it is maintained within the normal limits, patient prevents diabetic nephropathy. So diabetes mellitus affect all the small blood vessels in the body. The diabetic nephropathy is seen, and diabetic ophthalmopathy can be seen as well. Diabetic nephropathy is the leading cause of chronic renal failure in the industrialized world. It is also one of the most significant long-term complication terms of morbidity and mortality of individuals which are suffering from diabetes mellitus. 30 to 40% of patients develop end-stage renal disease, and mostly it is because in type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus. So the diabetes mellitus, the glomerular lesions which we see are capillary basement membrane thickening. There is thickening of the capillary basement membrane. There is diffuse glomerular sclerosis. There is nodular glomerular sclerosis or exudative lesions. These are the glomerular lesions. Other renal vascular lesions, principally arteriolosclerosis, is present as well because I've said diabetes mellitus affects small blood vessels in the body. Diabetic patients are very prone to infections, so pyelonephritis, including necrotizing papillitis, are very common in diabetic patients as well. We are going to do pyelonephritis tomorrow, inshallah. Okay, so this is the capillary basement membrane thickening by electron microscopy, which is seen in the renal glomerulonephritis, marked thickening in the glomerular basement membrane showing by electron microscopy. Here you can see diffuse glomerulosclerosis. Some of the basement membrane becomes thicker. Diffuse increase in mesangial matrix and capillary thickening is seen as well. This is known as glomerular nodulosclerosis. This is a nodule present within the glomeruli leading to sclerosis of that segment of the blood vessel. Previously, this disease was also known as Kimmel-Steele-Wilson disease. It's written here. Also known as intercapillary glomerulosclerosis or Kimmel-Steele-Wilson's disease. Any examiner can ask you in the viva, what do you understand by diabetic nephropathy with Kimmel-Steele-Wilson disease? You are going to say it consists of large acellular nodules which are located in the intercapillary region, and they lead to glomerulosclerosis, and they are called Kimmel-Steele nodules or Kimmel-Steele-Wilson disease. These nodules can vary in size. They are eosinophilic or they are PS positive and stain green with Mason trichrome stain. But you are only going to say about HND stain and PS stain that they appear pinkish in color. Okay. So this is the incidative lesion. The nodular lesions are frequently coupled by prominent accumulation of hyaline material in the capillary loops. So hyaline material can be present here and there in the capillary loops. Histological and immunofluorescence studies indicate that this incidative material represents filtration and constituent of plasma, including proteins, lipids, and polysaccharides. So fibrin caps. So these are the fibrin caps which are present on the capillary loops. Okay. And this is the capsular drop. You can see a capsular drop is present here. So these lesions are also present in the diabetic nephropathy. The immunofluorescence microscopy is a diffuse linear IgG along glomerular and tubular basement membrane. Here you can see, sorry, this is mostly seen in the diabetic nephropathy. कितना time रह गया? 12 minutes. Okay. Next is the lupus nephritis. Lupus nephritis, you know, systemic lupus erythematosus is an autoimmune disorder which affects the kidney. The pathogenesis of this lesion is likely to be related to inflammatory response resulting from presence of immune aggregates at the site of injury. So lupus nephritis always involves kidney. There are 5 classes or now 6 classes of lupus nephritis, class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. In class 1, this is the light microscopic changes are not seen. Normal mesangial immune deposits, it is maybe normal on microscopy by immunofluorescence, or you can only see mesangial immune deposits. This is class 1, or also called minimal mesangial lupus nephritis in SLE. Class 2 is mesangial proliferative lupus nephritis. Class 3 is focal lupus nephritis. Class 4 is diffuse lupus nephritis. Class 5 is membranous lupus nephritis. And class 6 is advanced sclerosis of lupus nephritis. You have done SLE in detail in your third year. So I'm just going to do the nephritis part. What you have to remember is these 6 classes are WHO classification lupus nephritis. Any examiner can ask you any question about this. Class 1 is, as I told you, minimal change. Histologically, in light microscopy, no change can be seen, but by small mesangial deposits can be seen by electron microscopy. In class 2, mesangial proliferative lupus nephritis, typical response completely to treatment with corticosteroids. Then comes the class 3, focal proliferative, often successfully responds to treatment with high doses of corticosteroid. This is the treatment plan, but this chart tells you what findings are present in each one of these classes. Okay. In class 2, mesangial immune deposits, few immune deposits, subepithelial, subendothelial, IF and electron microscopic findings are there. In the class 3, light microscopic findings or findings by immunofluorescence and electron microscopy, active or inactive focal segmental global glomerulopathies are seen. Class 4, active or inactive diffuse segmental global glomerulopathies are seen. In class 5, diffuse thickening of glomerular basement membrane. As the class increases, the proteinuria increases and there are less chances of reverting back into a normal kidney function, okay, or normal renal function. As the class is increasing, we are going towards the end stage renal disease. You can also say that, okay. So these are the 6 classes of lupus nephritis which are seen in systemic lupus erythematosus. Renal amyloidosis you have done in your third year. I'm only going to show you the slide. There is the amyloid deposits within the capillary loops, and this is also always extracellular pinkish deposits of amyloid material which are present, which can be stained by amyloid stain, which is Congo red. They appear red in color, and by HND stain, they appear pink. You can see these are all extracellular amyloid deposits. Tubular basement membrane ke bahar and within the capillary, outside the capillary loops, it is present. Okay. So this is the Congo red staining. You can see the birefringence of green color of the amyloid material, which can be seen here. This is the birefringence of green color, okay? Glomerulus from renal biopsy stained with Congo red and examined by polarizing microscopy, characteristic apple green birefringence is seen, okay, as I've told you. And when you do Congo red on the tissue, they will be red in color, okay? So this is fluorescence staining. You can see SOT bind to amyloid and fluorescence can be seen, okay? So next, nephrotic syndrome, I have told you yesterday. I'm not going into the details. I also told you the causes, the primary glomerular lesion and systemic diseases leading to nephrotic syndrome. We have done diabetes and SLE today. Okay. Next is the difference between nephrotic and nephritic syndrome, which I've done right now. Next comes the chronic glomerulonephritis. Chronic glomerulonephritis is the end-stage renal disease of all the glomerulonephritis, which lead to chronic glomerulonephritis. So any glomerulonephritis which becomes of a prolonged duration can lead to chronic glomerulonephritis or end-stage renal disease. So chronic glomerulonephritis refers to end-stage glomerular disease that may result from specific type of glomerulonephritis or can occur over a long period without any recognizable glomerulonephritis, and also in cases of systemic diseases as well. Membranous nephropathy, membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis, mesenteroproliferative glomerulonephritis, IgA nephropathy, FSGS, focal segmental glomerulosclerosis all progress to chronic renal failure. Then systemic diseases like diabetes mellitus, SLE all lead to chronic end-stage renal disease, ESRD, end-stage renal disease. So you can see causes. Post-streptococcal have very thin causes of going into chronic. Mostly these people recover. Crescentic, most of them go into chronic. Membranous nephropathy, half of them. Focal segmental, most of them. Membranoproliferative, some of them go. IgA nephropathy, some number can go, but not all of them. Others can also lead to chronic glomerulonephritis. So morphologically in chronic glomerulonephritis, the kidneys are symmetrically contracted. They have diffuse granular cortex and they become shrunken in size. They become smaller in size and contracted in size, and the cortex become granular. Cut section, the cortex is thinned out and increase in peripelvic fat can be seen. Microscopically, what we see, glomerular histology depend upon the stage of the disease. In the late stages, we mostly see obliteration of most of all of the glomeruli, which transform into acellular eosinophilic masses. We do not see the normal capillary loops here. We only see acellular eosinophilic masses in the glomeruli. And this is because of the trapping of plasma protein in them. Increased mesangial matrix can be seen. Basement membrane thickening of the glomerular basement membrane and collagen deposition can be seen. Arterial and arteriolosclerosis may be seen. Arterial and arteriolosclerosis I'm going to do when I'm going to do renal pathology, vascular pathology in kidney. So this is the chronic glomerulonephritis. These are the diffuse, one few glomeruli appear normal. Rest of the glomeruli, you can see the basement trichrome stain, they are stained blue in color because, and this is all fibrous tissue. They have all become sclerosed and fibrosed, and this is arteriolosclerosis. There is going to be thickening of the basement membrane of the arteries as well. This glomerulus appears normal, but again you can see thickening of the Bowman's capsule. So this is chronic glomerulonephritis. In between the interstitium, you can see chronic inflammatory infiltrate, which is composed of lymphocytes. It is again an end-stage renal disease slide. This is a glomerulus which has totally become acellular. Pinkish material is seen instead of the normal capillary loops. Here you can see few patent capillary loops, but rest of the glomeruli show glomerulosclerosis. All these sclerosed glomeruli. Tubules are one few present. Otherwise, interstitium has also fibrosis and chronic inflammatory infiltrate. This is the end stage renal disease. Okay. This picture can be of your OSPI slide as well. Okay. So next are the tubular interstitial diseases. Tubular interstitial diseases and acute tubular necrosis. We are going to do with Professor Tahir as well. So I'll just quickly go through this if I have time. Otherwise, he is going to do it in detail. Okay. So tubular and interstitial diseases. I'm going to do pyelonephritis tomorrow. Time okay? Okay. So I'm going to unmute you so you can ask questions. The rest we are going to do tomorrow. I hope glomerulonephritis is clear. It is I know it's a difficult topic. If you have any questions, you are most welcome to ask me in your WhatsApp group. I'm willing to answer, okay? Or you can also ask me on your LMS as well. सबको अनम्यूट कर दो कोई बात नहीं तुम अनम्यूट कर दो
मैम सबको नहीं इनके पास उसकी ऑप्शन है
अच्छा if you want to ask any questions you can ask it now any questions किन किन को किया इन पे तो अभी भी काटा ही आ रहा है
हाँ जी लेकिन उन्होंने खुद को अनम्यूट नहीं किया
अच्छा okay so if there are no questions I'm going to talk to you tomorrow inshallah thank you
बाय तो नया वापस कर दो